Welcome back everyone. So this week I decided that I just want to do a very casual chat with you guys about some of the books that I want to read before the end of the year. So I buy a lot of books, I stock them in my shelves, and then whenever I have time I kind of pick them up, and I try not to read more than one book at a time. Or if I do read more than one book at a time, I usually read a non-fiction and then a fiction, so I'm not kind of overlapping with any stories. We're gonna keep it casual this week. I'm gonna call these series Fireside Chats, even though I don't have a fireplace, but I will be aiming to get one hopefully in the future. Hopefully you guys will like some of the books that I've bought and you'll like the recommendations, and then you guys can go and purchase them and read them yourselves. So if you're new here, I'm just gonna introduce myself. My name is Mona and I'm a journalist. I'm an aspiring author at the moment. I've worked in comms. In the past, I was a fashion journalist and I attended lots of London Fashion Week, and that was super fun. I've written for lots of lifestyle and fashion magazines in the past, and I hope you enjoyed this series. Okay, so we're gonna start with non-fiction. The first one is The Mountain Is You. Now, this book is by Brenna Weiss. This book I've heard a lot about. I actually watched a video. I think I watched a YouTube video by Ali Abdal, and he actually spoke about this book, and ever since then I've been thinking about this book and I've really wanted to buy it and check it out. It talks about self-sabotage and how that can kind of ruin where you need to go. It can ruin your productivity. It can seep into every aspect of your life. It can overtake it. In other words, it talks about getting over yourself and just stop self-sabotage and get on with your life. So I feel like it's actually quite exciting. It would be quite fulfilling. I think everyone has some sort of self-sabotage, whether they notice it or not. I'm pretty sure I have some tactics that I use that I'm not even aware of. So this is something that I'm definitely looking forward to. Okay, on to the next. So the next one is The Tipping Point by Malcolm Gladwell. I've heard a lot about this book. So the concept of this book is that small things make a big difference. I mean, there's a lot of research now out there about this topic, about how tiny changes or tiny habits can make a monumental difference in the long run. And I think James Clear talks about it in Atomic Habits, where he talks about the more you change tiny habits, the bigger the effect it is, and it affects in all areas of life. And I've kind of experienced that a little bit with myself, so with my discipline and things like that. So I just think I'm looking forward to this. I'm looking forward to reading this and seeing Malcolm Gladwell's point of view. So yeah, this is one of the books. This one I'm actually really excited about because I've heard a lot about it. All the YouTube videos that I've watched of StudyTube, they really talk about this book a lot, called Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman, and I am so excited. So I've read a couple of pages. I quickly glazed over the book and I've read maybe like 2 or 3 pages of it, but all that I've read seems very, very exciting. I've made some annotations, so you can see I've barely read anything. I've just done a little bit. It needs to finish. I have this issue where I buy books, I read 2-3 pages, and then I just leave them, and I don't know why I do it, but I really should fix that at some point. The main thing is that I really want to get this book finished. And yeah, it's just basically, it just talks a lot about your brain, how you have fast processing and then there's slow processing, and Daniel Kahneman has years and years of experience. He's also a winner of Nobel Peace Prize, so this is definitely worth a good read. It's obviously quite heavy and there's a lot of research on it, which I realized when I read the first few pages. There's intellectual games in here, so basically there's photos and stuff like that where it tells you why your brain thinks a certain way. So things like this, why you see what you see and things like that. So it's actually very, very interesting, and I mean, there's a reason why he's a winner of a Nobel Prize, so this is definitely a must read. On to the next book. So this book I've actually read a little bit because I think if you're in a 9-to-5 job, in your traditional 9-to-5 job, this book is definitely a game changer, especially if you're not a very confident person, and people who really struggle with asking for pay rise or things, or their own space and things like that. They really struggle with connecting with their bosses about what they actually need and require in a job. So this book is none other than 4 Hour Week by Tim Ferriss. I've actually gone to Tim Ferriss's website, and it's very, very interesting because he has a lot of resources and tools that can help you if you're really, really struggling with your work life. So as you can see, I've annotated quite a lot of it. I think the main thing that I took out of the pages that I've read so far is how to get a pay rise, how to manage yourself to be able to put yourself in a position so that you can be promoted, which no one really talks about. And people just assume that you go into a job and you just work hard and hopefully somebody will notice how hard you've been working, but actually it's not the case. And it definitely details that in this book, and that's why I love it, because it's very honest and it just gives you details that nobody else would really share with you. I think sometimes even friends don't share. So it's just a really, really good book. So far, what I've read, I actually loved, and everything that I've read is super helpful. And I've actually tried some of the tactics in my last job, and they did actually work. So I definitely feel like I need to finish this book. Again, it's very thick, but hopefully I'll be able to get this done and ticked off in my 2024 reading list. Okay, on to the next book. This one is literally a game changer. I'm not a very good finance person. Unfortunately, I totally sucked at maths when I was in school. I barely passed, and I try to avoid it as much as I can, but I feel like now at this age, I need to really figure out my finances and figure out what's going on with my life in terms of finance. And I've read a couple of books. I've read Psychology of Money, which I didn't quite like, and I've read a couple of other books. But if I'm going to be very honest, a lot of it goes over my head because I don't like to think about it. I think I'm just not putting that much effort into it. But this book, she is such a legend. She is such an amazing person, such a cool person. She just sounds like somebody that I want to hang out with. And she's recently just got married. Her wedding was actually covered by Brides magazine. I follow her on Instagram, and I just think she's the coolest person I've ever come across on the internet who does finance. So she's actually a Wall Street girly. So she basically graduated and got a job right at Wall Street, and obviously that's not an easy thing to do. It's very difficult. It's very tough to actually work at Wall Street. I obviously know that, and you guys have probably watched all those movies where it's it's heavily male dominated industry. And I just think she makes finance fun. So I've never actually read a finance book which I felt like actually spoke to me or actually spoke to women in general. I'm not trying to put any of the other women down. I know there's a lot of women that are doing really, really well, and they do help, especially on Instagram actually, especially nowadays. They do share how they invest and everything like that. But I just felt like this, for some reason, just really spoke to me. So it's not a person dig to any other female authors, writers, business women that are doing really, really well. I just really find her delivery quite fun and it's engaging. So again, I've annotated it and I've read some of it. I've read parts of it, and some of it I really enjoy. Some of it is still going over my head. So I'm going to try and read it, but I really want to get through towards the end of it because there's lots of tactics. So I've actually used some of the budgeting rules and I've used some of the other concepts as well. What I love about this is that it really goes into the nitty-gritty. So she actually tells you if something happens, say this, this, and this, and most likely this, this, and this will happen. And again, I've tried some of the tactics and it totally worked. So I'm definitely a hands down huge fan, and I doubt she's ever gonna watch this, but congratulations on your wedding, and you looked amazing in it, and I'm definitely a bit of a super fan. So yeah, if you ever get a chance, this is Vivian Chu, Rich AF, and I love the cover too. It's just so glam. It's so glam. She makes finance fun. She makes me want to go and apply for a job in finance, and she makes me want to sort out my finances, and that's exactly what you need, because finance is just one of the hardest things that I've ever had to come across, especially managing my own finances. So this book is a must buy, guys, but it's also on my 2024 list, and I will be sorting out my finances at least by the end of this year, so this book will be completed. So this book I actually picked up a while ago and I got it for free. So if you actually search for effective altruism and then you also search for William MacAskill, he actually had an interview with Trevor Noah on his show, on his talk show. So yeah, if you search effective altruism and William MacAskill, it will definitely come up, and it will come up with a website. And I think when you actually log onto the website and sign up for the newsletter, yeah, there's 2 books that he's published, and you can pick which one you want, and they will literally send this book to you for free. And that's amazing, especially if you're a book lover, if you like those type of things. I love the fact that the initiative here was to get you to know a bit more about effective altruism, but then also to get you to read about it. And I love that the concept is a free book if you sign up. So that book is called Doing Good Better, and it's actually called Effective Altruism and a Radical New Way to Make a Difference. So you're probably wondering, what is effective altruism? And I will tell you, I'll read a little bit about it. So most of us want to make a difference. We donate to charity, buy fair trade coffee, or try to cut down on our carbon emissions. Rarely do we know if we're really helping, and despite our best intentions, our actions can have ineffective and sometimes downright harmful outcomes. Confronting these problems, William MacAskill developed the concept of effective altruism, a practical, data-driven approach which shows that each of us has the power to do an astonishing amount of good, given the right information. His conclusions are often surprising. By examining the charities we give to, the goods we buy, and the careers we pursue, Doing Good Better is a fascinating and original guide which shows how, through simple actions, you can improve thousands of lives, including your own. How lovely is that? That is true altruism. It's just such a feel-good book. I think I've read that, and then I've watched a lot of his interviews. He just seems like such a cool guy. He seems like he's a philosophy graduate of Oxford, and I think he actually became the youngest philosophy lecturer ever in Oxford, which is amazing. So he's a young guy, very, very intelligent, and this book is totally worth reading. I've heard a lot of good things about it, so I definitely need to get around. I actually got this a long time ago and I haven't got around to reading it, but I will. So this is on my reading 24 list. So this is on my TBR 2024 list. I've been wanting to read it for ages, and it's called Beyond Good and Evil by, I hope I'm saying this right, by Friedrich Nietzsche. And I'm not gonna try and say that again. I think I sound very silly when I say it. And it's Beyond Good and Evil. It's a philosophy book, and it basically talks about lots of philosophy debates, issues, and his version of what philosophy is. So yeah, I will link the name down below and you can read it on your own, because I really don't want to say it again. But yes, I'm excited to read this because I recently really gotten into philosophy, and I've actually read some of the debates. I actually went to Oxford for a weekend to hear a couple of lectures on philosophy, and I kind of picked up the common debates and issues within philosophy, and I'm definitely into it, so I can't wait to read this one. So that's basically it for the non-fiction section, and then we're gonna move on to the fiction one, where I'm gonna list a couple of books. So let's move on to the next. So I've got a whole list of books. I've got a pile of books here that we need to get through. Starting with one of my most anticipated books that I've wanted to read. I actually lived in the Middle East, and some of the books, well, actually quite a few of the books were banned, which they teach here. You just don't get them there just because of the content of the book. And so I get to read all these fun new books that I've always heard about, but I've never seen. And one of them is the one and only F. Scott Fitzgerald, and this one is The Great Gatsby. I bought this book off, I think I bought it online. I bought it from Penguin. I'm absolutely obsessed with the cover because look how classic that is. It takes you right back to the roaring 1920s, New York City, social vibe. I've definitely watched the movie, which for a while it was on Netflix, I think. It's one of my most favorite movies. So yeah, I can't wait to read this. I've actually only read one page, but even that one page was actually quite exciting. So I'm waiting for when I can read this. So the next book is called Master and Margarita. I've heard a lot about it. I've heard that it's meant to be a really good book, so I bought it. and there's not much that I know about it. It's by an author called Mikhail Bulgakov. Hopefully I've said that correctly. So it sounds quite exciting. It says, as a mysterious gentleman and self-proclaimed magician arrives in Moscow, followed by a most bizarre retinue of servants, which includes a strangely dressed ex-choirmaster, a fanged hitman, and a mischievous tomcat with the gift of the gab, the Russian literary world is shaken to its foundations. It soon becomes clear that he is the devil and that he has come to wreak havoc among the cultural elite of the disbelieving capital. But the devil's mission quickly becomes entangled with the fate of the master, the author of an unpublished historical novel about Pontius Pilate, who has turned his back on real life and his lover Margarita, finding shelter in a lunatic asylum after traumatic publishers' rejections, vilification in the press, and political persecution. So that sounds quite exciting. I've also never really read a book that's been based in Moscow, so that should be quite an interesting read. Right, so next one, I went to like a small fair in Hartford, and in one of the stalls they were actually giving out free books, so you could literally just grab any book that you wanted. So I basically got this book. I love the cover of it and I like the name of it. It's called White Rabbit, and I've never actually heard of the author, Tom Pollock, but he sounds quite interesting. And it says, 17-year-old Pete Blankman is a math prodigy. He also suffers from severe panic attacks. He takes refuge in the love and support of his family, but his life is crippled by fear. Then the unthinkable happens. Pete discovers that his mother has been stabbed and his twin sister Belle is missing. Dragged into a world of espionage and violence where state and family secrets intertwine, can Pete's exceptional skills and instincts save him? And that sounds absolutely interesting. Sounds right up my alley. The book cover is quite simple with that white rabbit, and I want to know what is the white rabbit, so I'm actually kind of curious in a way. So yeah, can't wait to get around to this. Another favorite, which I bought a while ago and can't believe I haven't gotten around to reading it, is the one and only Babel by R.F. Kuang. So I usually sit at Waterstones quite often, and picked up this book at Waterstones when it first came out, and I think I read maybe around the first 5 pages as I was drinking some green tea in the cafe, and I was hooked. Like, I did not want to leave. I don't know why I didn't buy the book at that time. I think I was just busy, and I was like, when am I gonna ever have time to read it? I went back later that week and I actually bought the book. It's obviously right up my alley because it's very dark academia, which is very me. It's also based in Oxford. If you've seen my video, I did a short weekend course at Oxford University, and I loved it. I will link that video somewhere on the screen. You can actually have a look where I visited Oxford. I'm excited to read this. If you're a reader and if you haven't heard of R.F. Kuang, you're definitely living under a rock, because she's literally one of the best writers the world has ever really seen. I read her book Yellowface. I think I did say that it was actually a very good book. I think it's in one of my other videos. I did say that she writes amazingly. I cannot wait to add this to the folders of my brain and have the words etched in my mind and memory for life. I'm very excited to be getting around to this one. Right, so next one, Natalie Haynes, and it's basically a rethinking. It's called Stone Blind, and it's a rethinking of Medusa's story. Natalie Haynes, the author, she's known for her retelling Greek mythology, and I've always been interested in Greek mythology, but I've never really read much about it. I've never studied it. I would love to do that. If you're out there and you've studied classics, please hit me up and we'll talk about it, and you can teach me all about classics because I'm very, very interested. But yeah, I picked this book up and I think I read around maybe 3 or 4 pages. I'm just gonna read it to you because it's really interesting. So it's Medusa's story. So it talks about her being raised by her sisters. It talks about some of the other gods, but it's very, very interesting. It's meant to be like a new take of Medusa's life, because we usually see her in a more evil light. However, this kind of puts her in a more positive and like makes her more humane. So yes, I'm definitely excited. So Natalie Haynes, thank you for publishing this, because I'm very, very excited. Right, on to the next. So this one I've actually read. People actually study this in English literature, and that is the one and only Tender is the Night. Now, somebody recommended this book to me, and I didn't know that this is one of F. Scott Fitzgerald's, one of his books, and I didn't know it was one of his really interesting books, and I didn't know that it's studied in the UK at school and at university level as well. So yeah, I bought the special cover, so I love this book, but I bought the special cover from Waterstones, and I think they have a couple of other classics that you can buy with specific covers, but look how pretty. Yeah, I love it. Okay, so it's called Tender is the Night, and it's based off of Zelda and F. Scott Fitzgerald's life and their marriage and what they experienced together. So yeah, and a lot of it is actually set in the French Riviera, and of course, who doesn't want to spend time in the French Riviera? So when I feel like escaping, I will definitely pick this book up. Like I was saying, I've actually read the book. I've actually read quite a lot of the book, but I think because the language and the words are so different, I actually have to slowly read it and kind of understand everything, because it's also the sentence structures are very difficult. Like, they're very difficult for me to understand, and I want to analyze it in a more intellectual way when I read the book, and I want to make my own notes. Okay, so that's it for the books that I'd like to read at the end of the year. I don't think I have that many, so hopefully I'll be able to get those finished. If you like my Fireside series, then please like and subscribe to my YouTube channel so I can make some more content for you guys. And then I'll be able to buy some new books, and then I will do another one of this series. But I hope that this series has been helpful, and some of the books that I've recommended are books that you want to read. I will link down all the codes where you can shop these books if you do want to purchase them. And yeah, and I will see you next week.